insights. Give us some gossip. Who skateboarded?
I didn't see skateboarding.
You didn't see? You were asleep.
No, I think I'm better. Yeah, there was a lot of champagne on that flight.
So what was it like?
Actually, it was great. I think it was a good way to get to know people before coming here, right? So I'm running into faces already that I feel like I've met. Great chance to share stories, hear about everybody. Such a different background, so that was actually interesting.
Yeah, mostly, I guess, San Francisco based, or?
Yeah, definitely a lot of back and forth. I was
Okay.
surprised by that. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I met a lot of people from Finland. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And good food.
It was good food. I don't think I remember the food, but yeah.
Shari's background with us is rooted in an acquisition that EY did maybe 2 years back?
Yep, almost 2 years.
2 years back, and she was one of the founders of Tasman Consulting, so that's where we got her and a few other peoples to bring a new element into our transaction advisory services, which is the HR or the people side of an M&A process. And I think primarily, I think you over the years you worked on the buy side. I think you have a Cisco background before Tasman Consulting, and now with EY.
Yeah, so I spent about 11 years at Cisco Systems. We acquired, like 1 year alone, we acquired. I'm putting you a bit louder. Oh, sorry. In about 1 year alone, we acquired 20 companies. So it was and over that time frame that I was there, about 11 years, we did probably at least 100 acquisitions. We did everything from small deals. We would create a lot of spin-ins. So Cisco was famous at the time for spin-ins, which basically we would fund and invest small companies in technology, kind of put maybe some of our resources there and look at developing it, getting it ready to be bought, and then we would spin it in later. And then we also did a lot of large acquisitions like Tandberg, WebEx, and others along the way. So it was such a great experience, I think, to get that hands-on, deal after deal, global deals. It was an amazing machine.
And what changed when you then eventually set up Tasman Consulting?
Yeah, so we actually were at Cisco, and after about 10 years, you're really ready to do something else. So three women, we were there. We decided to start our own company. So we went out. We kind of threw the idea to a couple of friends. So one of them was American Express, and they said, "Yeah, we would actually love to work with you." So we started our own company called Tasman. Tasman was actually the road that Cisco is on. It was the easiest name we could find. we weren't too creative. And we went out and we did the first deal in Germany, which is not, if any of you know doing deals in Germany, it's not the easiest, especially with a company like American Express, which has been around forever. So lots of works council issues, dealing with everything, but it went really well. But I think starting out as your first client, we were able to go right after that and pick up LinkedIn, SuccessFactors, and grow from there. And so we grew our firm over 6 years, pretty much a heavily women-based, women-owned, and I'll be honest, most of the people we hired were women, oddly enough. I don't know why, it just happened. And we ended up adding clients like Cisco and Dell and Salesforce and Autodesk and Twitter and just pretty much most of the companies in the Valley. We stayed heavy tech and eventually went a bit into solar because of the VCs really kind of bridge both those areas in the Valley, and we would tend to work with them over and over. So we were usually on the buy side, so we look at the startups and we buy them, and we really look at the talent component of that. And so, do you want me to explain what that means? Because I think some people always wonder.
The acqui-hire or talent, whatever the world is, word is nowadays.
So what we really do is we look at the people side. I have to tell you, one thing I found, Silicon Valley is different than, say, if you're over on the East Coast of the US where you're buying big, Dow and DuPont merge. It's very different. Look, we're buying talent when we're in the Valley. We might buy a piece of technology, but we're buying the next generation of technology through leadership. I've had the amazing experience to bring in people like Drew Major. Drew Major was the founder, he wrote the original code in Novell. And I brought him in through an acquisition. He would never have come in the door of a company, right? I've worked with, I brought in Andy Bechtolsheim, the founder of Sun. So these are people, the way you can get true, amazing, interesting talent is through acquisitions. Especially when you're trying to grow a space that's new. It's hard for a large buy company, right? Going out to buy a new technology. It's just, again, it's hard to move as fast as you would like in a large company. So we look at the newest technologies. And right now I'm spending a lot of time on artificial intelligence, I'm looking at autonomous driving, and so these are the hot spaces. So when I go out there, we spend time sort of looking at the talent in the company, structuring the deal so that we can lock in that talent. Because look, if you don't have that talent, you buy that company, and if you don't hold them for at least a good 1 to 2 years to develop it, you've wasted your money. And so our goal is to find ways to protect the investment for the company. And that means we go in and we structure things on the letter of intent or the term sheet around retention, whether it's through creative things like holdbacks, revesting, which is very common. We'll push that out, which means basically if you own stock today and you're vested, I might ask you to revest it over another couple of years. You sort of have to earn it back. Now, of course, you're going to ask for something really nice in exchange for that, and we'll work on that. But that's sort of what we do. So we structure the term sheet to lock in the talent.
And then
EY came.
Yeah.
and you know, you became I guess you were the talent that EY was looking at. Is that how you see it, or what's the story there?
So I think for us it was a little surprising. I don't think we actually expected to sell our company or be an acquisition, especially while we were doing deals for other companies, which was hard. You know, we had a couple companies come forward and really look to bring us on, which was surprising. So we actually started talking seriously. And of those companies, EY was the best fit for us because there's still so much growth. There's no set practice right now on the West Coast or through the US in developing that side of it, the talent piece and the acquisitions. That space was still new enough that we were interested in doing it. We basically did not want to go to a machine, and EY is not a machine. They're creative and they're willing to be flexible. So for us, it was a great decision. And it's allowed us to grow. We have been nonstop on the West Coast.
And I guess, you know, you are certainly involved in cross-border deals as well.
Oh,
If your first deal was Germany, I think with EY, I'm sure you can, you know, count on, you know, bringing your talent into cross-border transactions as well.
Yeah, so we just worked on a large deal with GoDaddy, which covered most of Europe. HEG, they purchased HEG, which was made up of 22 acquisitions. Extremely hard acquisition to do. Still doing it, actually. We are working with Marvell and Kevium, which is a large, again, global merger. We just kicked that one off. We just finished, actually I did one outside of tech, Agrium Potash, but a huge, so we spend most of our time globally. And then what I think has brought us a huge value is the large EY global team that we reach out to partner on some of the complex areas. Because after we finish letter of intent on a deal and get through it, it's really about integration. And for deals in the Valley, we move fast. We want a deal done tomorrow. We don't want to wait a year or two. So we are doing integration after integration and moving very, very fast. So it's challenging, but amazing at the same time.
If I look around the audience, there's a lot of Finnish talent set up as corporations. So what would be your advice to a Finnish startup founder who wants to eventually at least dream of an exit to a large tech company? You know, let's position them in the US on the West Coast. I mean, what would you sort of, you know, the 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I do find having a presence in the Bay Area is helpful, even if it's a small sales office, to build those relationships. Everything in Silicon Valley is about the network. You'll see it with kind of the Israeli startups. A great example where I see you guys very similar, right? Lots of talent here. With that, you've got to build that connection. In Israel, we have a huge connection going into truly Palo Alto, and they have offices and relationships. So it opens that door to being much more available for that exit, ideally an acquisition. So I do think having a presence there and those relationships are key. I would also say I think that one thing that's very important is attending, you know, local events and getting to know people in the Bay Area. Again, it's all about networking. I find that unfortunately many of the teams there and the companies tend to look around them. I don't think they look broad enough. Though I have to admit, I have a company right now looking at a deal up here in the Nordic region, so it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
But I'm sure you're not going to tell
No,
us
I
more.
can't. No, it's so early.
Okay. You know, there are a few people here who represent the larger corporates, and I think, you know, Finnish companies, large corporates are looking at the US market for acquisitions, buying smaller companies, buying that talent. What's your advice to them in a sense that, you know, how does a Finnish large corporate, you know, eventually even get a deal done or get to talk to the right talent?
Yeah, okay, so I just worked on one recently. It hasn't gone far enough to give the names, but it's a large, older company in Europe. amazing company. It needs this unicorn in the valley. Like it needs to grow through this
And
acquisition.
unicorn, so we're talking about a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of money. It needs it. But the problem that I'm finding, the struggle that we are in the front end stage is that as an older, more established company, the way that you compensate and reward is very different and maybe not as attractive to this startup environment. So where we're actually coming in to help is helping to develop a much more attractive approach for the employees that are at the start, to give them that environment, that's still that feel of growth for the next couple of years, because this product needs to grow again for another couple of years to be effective. But this larger company, well established, really needs it to grow, to be, it needs it for the future, longevity of their company. But again, it's very hard when you come in with very seniority-based incentives, because that's not the culture in the Valley. Much more about pay for performance. So really trying to restructure that and build a front end that's attractive enough to get them to sign up, because there's obviously other parties involved or interested. That's where we're spending a lot of our time. So I think culturally, that moving a bit away from maybe seniority and a bit more pay for performance is what I'm saying.
If we talk a little bit in terms of how your expertise or talent then fits into, at EY we tend to talk about transaction advisory services and people advisory services. How do you integrate? I mean, are you part of a larger deal team, or do people actually come and pick your talent for specifically? How are we trying to sort of position ourselves, I guess, in a truly a trusted advisor role?
Yeah, it's interesting. I still think we get tapped on the shoulder by law firms to come help structure the early stage executive compensation and retention. But we really want to be part of the larger project. So we want to work with the tax structuring team in that early phase, and then we want to work with the OTS teams, or the transactional teams later, to do all the integration. Because what we really try to bring is, think about it, we are working with them day one on their letter of intent, why they're buying this company, the whole reason for doing this, why the valuation is where it is. What we want to do is then execute on those reasons. Basically take why you're buying it, why you think you're going to willing to pay so much money, and carry that all the way through the integration, end to end. So that's really why we want to be there from day one all the way through post-close integration, so we can be successful. And to be honest, we build a very long-term relationship with our clients. Like I said, we've got a company who came to us just to tell us they're starting to look at a certain company. What do we think? What do we see the challenges being? What can we do to help them? That's what we really want to be, is that long-term partnership to really help them in their integration growth, basically their inorganic kind of strategy.
And looking at from a Finland perspective, how hot is Silicon Valley? I mean, is it, are there signs that, from the people side, things are, starting to get ridiculous, I think might be the word.
No, I think it is again. I'm seeing, so if you think about it, in 2000, I saw a big bubble, right? It was really, I'll admit, it was a great time. It was fun. I loved it until 2001. 2001, we took a dip, had to do a lot of restructuring in companies. We had another kind of bubble in 2006. We're sort of seeing that again, and it's really around these newer technologies. What I love is artificial intelligence. So some of these companies, they're very small, very new. So you're looking at buying companies with a year to 2 years of experience, right, in the market again, and you're paying huge amounts of money because that talent is so limited. You're seeing it, like I mentioned earlier, with autonomous driving. Delphi just looked at autonomy, and so again, you're looking at this unique set of skills and people that are going to be the future. We know this is coming, right? This is rolling out. So what you're trying to do is capture that now, and you're paying a lot more for it. So I do feel like we're seeing in some areas another little bubble, and I mean, the evaluations are large.
And we tend to also use the term convergence. I mean, is AI, for instance, a sort of an accelerator of that sort of movement or phenomena, or what do you see? Where are these industries going? I mean,
yeah, I think that it's as the larger companies are now seeing the potential for these, and then it's actually being adopted much faster. So one thing that's been interesting about AI, artificial intelligence, is I'm seeing more large mainstream companies, the Sonys, the bigger companies, actually adopting this very fast. So with that out there, you're seeing a lot more companies going out to buy this to basically speed up the process. So I feel like it's much faster to market now with some of these technologies, which I think would have been a little scarier, 10 years ago. But now I feel like we're implementing AI in companies right away. And so it's almost moving so fast that these newer technologies can barely keep up.
I think we're pretty much done. Shari, it's incredible that you made the effort to get on the Slush flight and you're here. And I think there's a lot of people in the audience, colleagues from EY who are part of a broader service in relation to transactions, and most of them are wearing the gray T-shirts. I think you're going to be on and off the lounge, I guess, today, tomorrow, and I think the flight is back on Saturday. So
I'm here.
Thank you very much. And any questions from the audience? Anyone want to, pick or come across someone that is really now at the core of that kind of activity in Silicon Valley, but also more on a global basis. So anyone there? I think Finnish audience.
There's a question I can.
Yeah. Okay.
So my question is, what inspires Ernst & Young you can ask also maybe asking from a personal perspective, because you're dealing with lots of things that we're dealing with here. So maybe asking from a personal perspective makes sense in your being interviewed. So ask this not from your company's perspective, but your personal perspective. What inspires you most at the moment?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think for me, it's funny, I think the idea behind the conference, right, is solving problems. It's probably the reason I've stayed in M&A for over 20 years. I love it. There is no deal that is the same. And it's sort of like a package, right? Like a little gift. You open each one, you have no idea what you're going to get. And so for me, I love that. I constantly am learning. And it amazes me that after all these years and all these deals, and by the way, many CEOs I've had multiple times acquired, I still run into different problems and challenges. And so I find that so much fun. And it's so global, the relationships and the ability to influence that company and understand what they're doing. To this day, I am amazed all these years, and I still feel like I'm constantly learning. So I love that.
Other questions? All right. Here is People Advisory Services in Helsinki.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Shari, for this. It's interesting. You all touched upon this point a little bit, but I guess a lot of people are wondering that when a large corporation comes and acquires a smaller startup and so forth, and there are definitely some cultural issues there, kind of what are the main things that the larger company should consider, and what are your main advice in that one to kind of how to really make it work?
Yeah. It's funny, I worry about using the word culture or change because they get pushed off to the side as sort of like that HR stuff, right? Soft and fluffy. But yet, I'll be honest, if you are not the same underlying, you cannot align your culture, you're going to have challenges. So what I try to do is translate it into business terms. So for example, when I look at companies, I look at how do they go to market, right? Because if they are very similar or different, you're going to have challenges. And what I mean, I'll give you an example. I worked with a large company, and they're very much like, basically they go to their customers, they develop the product that that customer wants, and they sell it. And they make the decision top down. So they're very top down. They're very, low risk, easy to budget. They know exactly what they're going to do, low risk of failure. They merged with another company, which is sort of, we build a product, we throw it out there, we see what the market says. Bringing those two together, they're like, oh, we're aligned, we're the same, our customers are the same, our customers are number one, and we love our employees. They said all the same things, but what we found underlying that is that, look, one had a huge risk tolerance and the other didn't. Very different the way you reward, the way you do everything, right? And so they're also how you budget. How do you go to your customers? What risk are you? So all of these underlying issues caused problems. So we had to tackle those. And to get the mind share of executives, we couldn't just call it culture. We had to really go to productivity and how to get things done and how to make decisions. And really it's the same thing. It's just what we packaged it as. And really about productivity. And that's where we get it. But if you don't focus on that, it will fail. And I know articles talk about this all the time, but it's so true. Culture is everything. Unfortunately, I've watched too many companies come in and go back out because it's just miserable experience.
I don't want to close this chat with a miserable, so I think let's try to come up with something like, what's the weather like in Palo Alto?
It's quite nice. I know, I had struggled to find shoes for here. I was like, what is not, open toe, not flat? I mean, it's just, unfortunately we're hitting a rough, maybe 60 degrees, 70 Fahrenheit, so I hate to admit, it's quite nice.
Well, thank you, Shari, very much. And the program continues again in 30 minutes. Grab Shari, grab a cup of coffee, and thanks everyone for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thanks.